The October 10th Ascension Parish Planning Commission meeting will now come to order. Madam Secretary, please note that all commissioners are here present. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The chair has no comments to add tonight. Now we have a public comment period for items that are on the agenda. I'm sorry. Okay. Before you start, sir, I forgot one item that I can't even read my own handwriting. We'll start with the secretary. If you would introduce yourself, and we'll introduce the entire staff.
Stacy Webb, Secretary to Planning and Development.
Lindsay Manda, Legal Counsel to the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Ricky Compton, Planning and Development Director.
Michael Petty, Planner.
Lance Brock, Zoning Official.
Tim Ward, Engineering.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. Now for the public comment period. Okay, so.
Do you need me to sign anything? Can I just start?
You can go ahead and start. Just
Okay.
introduce yourself, and you
Okay.
have 3 minutes.
All right. I'm Clint Quintmall with W.J. Quintmall Surveyors. And I just wanted to speak briefly on some of the changes that are have happened in the past few months as well as years, and the compounding effect that they may have on the subdivision of property, on applicants as well as business owners and surveyors and engineers as well. I have a little cheat sheet here, so I'm going to go ahead and read off some of it here. There's been quite a few changes in the past 4 to 5 months regarding the process of subdivision of property. Signs having to be posted for family partitions and servitude revocations by the property owners themselves. The requirement to tie in all structures related to servitudes, examples, banks of bayous and ditches, shape files that are required to be submitted after we do a division of property, so the GIS department makes their job a lot easier. All of these changes, although seem to be good on face value, and the reason why they're required makes every survey and every subdivision of property more expensive. Every regulation change or requirement to do something extra, of course, affords more time and therefore more expensive to do these things. In these changes recently and over the past few years, of course, I've had to go up on my fees across the board for subdividing property or anything associated with Ascension Parish in order to divide property, area exchange, move a line over a foot, whatever the circumstance. All these costs have gone up, and of course, the applicant, which is an Ascension Parish citizen property owner, has to pay these. And so every time we have a change in these regulations or the interpretation of regulations or the adoption of new regulations, it affects everyone associated with the property, family partitions, the kids, the grandkids, any child, your brothers and sisters who have property and looking to give it to their siblings or their children. Whoever it may be, it's across the board raise in cost. And when you think, well, what are you talking about? I'm talking about 20, 30, even 40% in cases, depending upon the criteria of the division of property. That's extreme when you're talking about a $1,000 survey and increasing it that 30 to 40 to 20%. I mean, it's the developer don't have a problem with it because they got plenty of money, and they're gonna go the full. The developer don't have a problem. The person that works hard, who struggles month to month, that's the people that these changes affect. And in order to stay in business, for me, I have to pass that on, or I can't provide the service. I mean, everybody knows that. And you have a new one coming before you today. And I asked you, when you think about those changes, please consider the cost associated with them when you're discussing that, because it will be passed on, like always, and just please consider some alternatives that may not be as expensive.
Thank you,
Thank
sir. Any staff comments? Okay. Do you have notes that you just read?
I do.
Would you put them in a form, like more official, I guess, and give it to Ricky or send it to him? And then if y'all would look at them and just kind of give an update at the next meeting that says, here are the things that were brought up and here's why we have to do them or not do them, or we have leeway, whatever. Kind of put that in the staff report. Okay. Thank you. Any other public comment? Okay. All right, the first item is the approval or denial of the minutes of the September 12th Planning Commission meeting. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll second.
Did you catch those? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passed. Next is a public hearing to approve or deny the following family partitions. The first is Joseph Duplessis Senior Tract, lots JD 2A1 through JD 2A5. Do we have someone speaking on behalf of the applicant?
Ellen Jackson with McLean and Associates, representing Dr. Bonneville on this family partition. We have addressed all of the comments, and we're asking for your approval.
Any public comment? Okay, staff?
They addressed all the comments that we had had for those plats, so we
Wait a
recommend
minute.
approval.
Sorry.
We all live on that street, all have received notices on this. We have a question regarding the drainage.
Okay, well, you'll have to come up, sir. If you would state your name.
It's Todd Fairchild.
Okay, sir.
I'm a resident of Amelia Avenue. And through the past several storms, we have had a major drainage issue on this road. The water piles up in a number of the houses. It's coming up. It's actually come up onto my carport and been within inches of coming into my house already. I have no issue with the people building something on the land, but something that needs to be recognized and resolved before building takes place is the drainage issue in that neighborhood. And for that matter, the drainage off of the property in question, because we only have a very limited number of drainage ditches going out to the bayou, and the land where these homes are to be built retains water, and that water's got to go somewhere if that land's built up. So there's a very serious issue that needs to be researched here before land's built up, homes are put in, because they're, again, very serious drainage issue in that area. And I do have photos of our last storm with Isaac showing the water levels with me.
Thank you, sir. Other comment?
My name is Lonnie LeBlanc. I live at 2331 North Amelia. 25 feet from the back of my house is my back fence, property fence. And if that street for access to these 4 proposed buildings is put there, it's going to raise the level of the area so that the water off of our property will not drain out of the backyards. Also, the front of my property, it's 40 feet from the center of the street to the front of the house. In the back of the property, it's 23 feet from the back of my house to the fence. And they're going to build a street for automobiles to go up and down to these homes that they propose to build. That's fine with me, but it would be better if the street was built on the west side of that lot, because there's a wooded area that would serve as a sound barrier for vehicles going up and down that property. After I moved in, there's some kids that drove a four-wheel all-terrain vehicle around in a big circle on their property. And when they came by my house, they gunned it. They would gun it, and the exhaust resonated inside of my house. And I had to ask them to move over on the west side of the property. Sometimes I was successful, sometimes I was not, but it created an awful lot of noise. And I don't know what kind of vehicles to think may go up and down the street they propose to build, but it's going to create some additional noise. And I think if they built that street on the other side, it would serve two purposes. It would more or less solve our drainage problem, and it would also put the noise on the other side of the property along that wooded area. There's a wooded area there that's approximately 50 feet, maybe 60 feet deep. There's only one house in that area, and that's on the corner of the property on the Cannon Road side, and it seems to be about 45 or 50 feet from the ditch, from the big drainage ditch that's there. So I wish some consideration would be given to putting that street on the other side of the property. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening. My name is James Fairchild. I live at 2305 North Amelia. I agree with the points previous speakers have talked about on our street, and the one issue I want to bring up besides that is we have to have something to take care of the drainage. But if we wind up with an open ditch that's too deep and holds water, it's going to increase our mosquito problem also. And I agree with the gentleman that just spoke about possibly putting the road and the drainage on the side near the lower land where the treed area is, and it's also close to the bayou that it drains into. And it may be a possibility that it might be a consideration to talk to the folks in Gonzales at their council, because we do have seriously a drainage problem that needs to be updated very much. We have a place where two of our drains meet, underground pipe, no catch basin, just a big hole. And that's near where Todd Fairchild lives. And I think we should have, there's 3 pipes goes into that hole. It crosses the street, there's 3 pipes goes into a small catch basin that drains back to the parish ditch on the property we're talking about. And it really needs some consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other comments? Staff, we need some help here. We have city issues, parish issues, drainage issues.
So I'm going to go out on a limb here, Mr. LeBlanc, and correct me if I'm wrong. They are not building a street. This is going to be a limestone gravel drive. So at the most, I would imagine it's going to be 12 to 18 feet wide.
60 feet.
It's a 60-foot servitude of access, and that's only because of the number of lots that are being served. But we don't inspect it. But what I'm going to expect for it to be is probably 12 to 18 feet of limestone. It's just going to be a gravel drive, and it's never going to be a through street. It's never going to be a paved or curbed and gutter. It's going to have a swale. We don't inspect family partitions once the lots are created. We got into this issue several months ago when we started talking about a fill ordinance and whether we need to regulate fill placement on individual lots of record. And at the council level, I can tell you, we didn't get any support. We were told that we're concerned about major subdivisions. And so these types of developments, these family partitions and the simple divisions of property, they're going to continue to evolve the way they have over the last decades. And this family partition, and Ms. Jackson can let us know if the applicant is willing to move that drive, if they're willing to do any of that other stuff. But what I can tell you is it's never going to be a road. It's not going to be curb and guttered. It is going to have a swale. But this commission really just looks at it as far as does it meet the regulations of the code. And the family partition code it's pretty lenient, and what they have provided does meet it. If they're willing to work with you guys and move that drive, that's something that I think, based on what I'm seeing, could be accommodated, because that servitude of access could be made even smaller. I mean, they can ask for a variance from that as well.
Can I comment?
Yes, sir.
Regardless of what kind of drive they build, it's got to be built so that it doesn't impede the flow of water.
Yes, sir. And what we direct the citizens in that regard is, the onus is on the sort of good neighbor policy. We try to flex our muscle when we can and say, you can't impede the flow. And if the current drainage pattern is it leaves the back of your lot and enters this property, they can't build a dam and stop that from happening. They have to continue to allow it to get to that parish ditch.
I understand that, but there's only 2 drainage pipes off of North Amelia onto that property. One of them connects onto a large ditch that runs east and west just above my property. And when I first moved in there, it was plugged up, and the streets flooded into the neighbors' yards, and it came up into one person's house. And I got with city officials, and we had to get a fire truck out there and open up one pipe. The other pipe was stopped up so badly that they couldn't unplug it. But on the outlet end of that pipe, it was still plugged up. And apparently Mr. Duplessis had forbid the parish to put a tractor in there to open that ditch up. So I got out there with a shovel, and I cleaned it out to where water would go out. Now, after they built the plant sale place, they did bring a tractor in there and opened up the ditch more completely than I was able to do by hand. And we hadn't had any flooding problems at that part since then. But if you put a street in there, it's going to block the flow of water across out of our property onto that property, unless you put a ditch in for connecting onto the 2 ditches that are there now.
Right. Yeah. Do you want to respond at all? Wait, say, do it up there so they can see what you're talking about. Put it on the screen.
This lot has access on the west side. That is why we put the servitude, on the east side already.
Wait,
So that's why
just a second, it's not showing up yet. There it is, okay.
Okay. Well, this property, it has, this is the access on this side, so that's why we put the street on this side. And I guess we could consider moving the driveway over here, but, you have this ditch that's running on this side, so that would probably interfere with, could we have an all-purpose servitude?
Your drainage servitude could be within your access servitude if it's wide enough, similar to how we allow you to place your utility servitude within your access servitude if you need to make up some of that space. But what Ms. Jackson is saying is, just a few months ago, I don't know what the parent tract was, but they cut out and created frontage, a 90-foot frontage for the back lot. And just the way it was designed, that lot that was created, the frontage was on the east side. And so the question is, can we create a separate servitude of access down the other side, even though, and I think you could. I think that's, if the dimensions fit, something we could look at, because once again, even if it's a 50-foot servitude of access, if you granted a variance, they're not going to build a 50-foot road. They're going to put down 12 to 18 feet of gravel that fits well within a 50-foot or 40-foot private servitude of access. So if it fits, that's something that we would definitely encourage, because we could appease the adjacent property owners. But as far as we're concerned, the code doesn't require it, so for us, it's a good neighbor policy. Can you make it work doing it the other way?
What about issues, since this abuts the city, and there are obviously some drainage issues because of this, that are either caused by or impacted by the city. Are there other issues that we should discuss, or we're pretty limited in what we can do?
I can tell you in 4.5 years, a family partition has never been denied because of drainage issues. The drainage issues that we deal with typically are on the major subdivisions. The individual lot owners are not held to the same standards of a major subdivision, and it comes down to a civil matter between whether or not they have interrupted or caused a problem on an adjacent owner. I mean, we could definitely put a call into the city and say, hey, we're hearing from the Amelia residents and there seems to be a drainage, can you address this? But once again, it sounds like the ditches have been cleaned. They've got issues on their street with catch basins and whatnot. I mean, I don't know how this family partition is going to change that if they're not addressing it today.
I'm sorry. Second. Yes, sir.
I do have one comment to make.
You'll have to stand and come before the public.
The reason I'm speaking so strongly on the drainage is I am in the middle of the street. And throughout every storm of the past 4 years that I've lived there, I've had to personally go out, dig out around this cross pipe. I've had to clean out the pipes around. I've had to rake off leaves off of catch basins. Otherwise, my neighbors and my home would flood. This has been a sole responsibility of mine, and I can tell you I don't enjoy going out in the middle of a hurricane raking stuff off when this should be taken care of. What concerns me even more is I understand the driveway's not going to really be built up, but naturally they're going to build that property up for homes as well, and that essentially throws our properties, the adjoining properties, in a valley. And again, the water that's now sitting on this land when it rains has got to go somewhere. And I'm afraid it's going to fall right on us with the way this property is. There's only one ditch in the middle of our neighborhood that carries that water out to the bayou. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
This property is located in Zone X, so the property wouldn't need to be built up to build the homes. They could just build from ground. So that shouldn't affect the drainage.
Okay. All right, so, sure.
I don't want to hold things up, but I don't think there's very many houses been built in Ascension Parish lately that haven't had to be built up. I've personally built 2, and I built them both up, still had a minor problem with water, didn't build them high enough. We have a drainage problem, and I really think the city and the parish should get together on this situation and try to deal with it, because we're going to be in a terrible mess there. It's in the making. It's going to happen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, excuse me. The city is aware. We just made them aware of that problem where they need some catch basins, and someone has supposedly went out and looked at it. But we have no results yet. We don't know. So if contact with them could be made, it might be a help.
Okay. Well,
Thank you.
We'll extend that discussion, at least that part. There's, as you can hear, we're fairly limited in what we can and can't do as a commission in this regard. But we can certainly, with Ricky's help, get the drainage department for the parish meeting with the drainage department of the city to try to look at the issues that you brought up. Do I have questions on the commission?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question, or a couple questions about the, I see 2 ditches that look like they're existing going across the properties right now, center line 10-foot wide ditches that are going.
Yes.
You see what I'm talking about on the north end, close to the south, in between the last 2 lots?
Yeah.
I mean, you have to maintain those ditches when you put a road with some type of culvert. You can't
Yeah.
affect the water flow at all. I mean,
We understand.
is everyone understanding that that is going to be is going to be maintained. Is that one of the ditches that you're talking about now, that you're having to clean out, the one that's going between the last two lots?
Actually, that ditch has not been maintained in some time. It is in need right now to be trenched out. There's quite a bit of debris in that ditch as well as very tall weeds. And every time we have high water flow through, even more debris gets caught in it. So something is gonna have to be done at least with that as well.
Well, for engineering, that's nothing that we can't enforce that necessarily. Our drainage board can't really enforce that on a family partition to make sure that that ditch gets put to some kind of standard that
But isn't that a parish ditch?
is that a parish ditch, being that it's in a servitude?
Our entire neighborhood.
It's labeled as an existing drainage servitude, and I would imagine that if someone made a formal complaint, that the parish could go out to look at that
Redrain it
issue. And that's what I wrote down is, post it as a problem and have somebody from drainage go out and then respond as to whether or not there is an actual drainage problem there. But yes, when they build their driveway through those properties, we would expect them to put a culvert large enough to handle the volume that those ditches are currently carrying. But once again, this is a family partition and a private access servitude. If they construct it incorrectly, it becomes a civil matter between adjacent property owners, because we do not manage private access servitudes and flooding problems created because one person did something wrong. It just, unless we want to set a precedent and start doing that and have to change all the code, which I don't think is something that we're ready to do.
No, I don't think so.
Chairman, just a comment that it seems that we have several problems here, and a lot of them really don't deal with the issue that we have to determine. The drainage issues, seems like it could be part city, part parish, part lack of maintenance on somebody's part. I'm not real certain that approval or disapproval of this request or recommendation to the council would change anything as far as the drainage goes. It sounds like it's pretty bad now without anything being done. The lots are there. And I don't know that the code would allow us to reject this request based on code itself. So I think the drainage issues are something that's beyond our control at this point. And that's just something we need to consider when we make our decision.
Ms. Jackson, can you give us an indication of when this building or development might start if this were approved?
Within 6 months, spring.
So it'll be fairly soon then?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I think it's, obviously there are legitimate existing and concerns about future drainage problems in the area. I think the good thing that has happened here is that this request for a family partition has brought it to everyone's attention, and hopefully it'll be addressed. But I'm going to move that we recommend approval of the partition, but that the staff continue to work with the drainage department and whoever else needs to be involved to make certain that this new development of this partition doesn't exacerbate an existing problem.
Okay.
So I move that we recommend approval of the partition.
Any second?
I think I agree with Mr. Tafisi that it's shedding light on the fact that these servitudes might need to be cleaned out, and it might help in the long run to get these ditches maintained and cleaned out. I'd like to second his motion.
Okay, before I put it to vote, Mr. Compton, would you put together a letter from the chair to the parish drainage department asking that they report to us on, even though it's not necessarily in our purview, it does impact how we plan in the parish, and we need someone to tell us what, in situations like this, what do they see, what do they plan to do to address drainage issues like this that both exist and abut the city, and see if we can't get a report on that by the next meeting on this particular issue.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I would just like to ask the applicant that while we have a motion on the floor with a second for approval, would they at least consider keeping the option open of possibly discussing with the residents of moving this road to the opposite side if it's feasible for you? At least to consider it, you know. It may not
They would have to
pass.
grant a variance, wouldn't they?
All right, so if you want to make a substitute motion to address Mr. Nizo's concerns, then I would make a substitute motion and I would put the conditions that as long as all aspects of the code are met, or otherwise they're going to have to come back because what they're going to get signed isn't going to match what you approve. And so I would word your motion such that if they can come to a different solution that is more amenable to the adjacent property owners and doesn't affect the applicant, then condition your approval that that has to all meet code and doesn't have to come back for another public hearing, because they're not going to change the number of lots, you know, and if they need a variance to make it work, put that as part of your motion so that they don't have to come back for that. But, you know, work with them.
Mr. Jafisi, would you like to make the motion you just said?
I'll modify my motion to include the suggestion that the developer look at an alternate solution that would be amenable to the residents in the area, and that would lessen the possibility of future drainage issues, but that we still have the drainage department take a look at that. So I would modify my motion or amend my motion to include that stipulation.
I'd just like to say, Mr. Trevisi, I wasn't suggesting that we change your original motion as a mandatory thing, that they have to look at it, but I would have just liked to have requested.
It just includes a recommendation.
Okay, good, as a recommendation.
Well,
Mr.
good.
Ori, would you
I'd like
second
to
that
second
same
the
motion?
amended
Well,
motion that
I don't know if we ought to
agrees.
amend it in that way, because if they do not agree with one another, can they go ahead anyway?
Yes, they can.
That's what I was
So-
reading to.
So whether they agree or not, whatever you do is amenable to everybody or not, you
We'll
have to
try.
be able to still have the right to
That's
go
what I was saying.
ahead
As long as they meet the
and do
code.
it just like you want to do it.
But they do.
Right, that's what I was doing. I didn't want it to be a stipulation that
Okay.
you had to do it, but if it was possible, try to work with them to be
We
able to
will.
do it if you could.
Well, you're good neighbors, and we would expect as good neighbors that you'll work with these folks and see what we can do. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion is passed.
Thank you.
Thank you. And the folks that spoke, would you give Ricky your contact information, name, address, phone number, email address, et cetera, so that we can, when we send the letter, we're going to include that information to the Drainage Department so they reach out to you guys directly. Next is a public hearing to approve or deny the following family partition, John Hanna property lots A1, A1A, A1, A1B, and A1, A1C. You look familiar.
Ellen Jackson with McLean and Associates, representing Ms. Lene Christian on this family partition. And I believe we've answered all comments, and we're asking for your approval.
Thank you. Any public comment on this one? Okay, staff recommendation.
They addressed all the comments that we made, so we recommend approval.
Entertain a motion.
I so move.
I'll second the motion.
Mr. Bishop, seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passed.
Thank you.
Next is a public hearing to recommend approval or denial to the Parish Council of the following servitude revocation, Ashley Oak subdivision, lot 18A.
Good afternoon. My name is Scott Lobell with Lobell Engineering and Land Surveying. We'd like to formally request that the revocation of the existing 10-foot servitude running through Lot 18A. To give you guys a background, our client, Mr. Mathern, he had bought an abandoned well site property for inside of Ashley Oaks. After that purchase, February 13th, we re-subdivided the property for him, It was not a typical resub, because what we were doing was we were taking that additional property and creating one lot, not going down into further lots. In doing that, we abandoned a property line that had an existing 10-foot servitude along it. And to have usable property, we'd like to revocate that servitude, and in order to do that, we're willing to do a little harsh trading, continue a 10-foot servitude down the other side of the well site property, and also connect existing 15-foot servitude along the original Lot 18 and original Lot 7. If you guys have any other questions, I'll do my best to answer them.
Any other public comment? Staff?
We agree with the horse trading.
Okay, you just not approval, okay. Entertain a motion for approval or denial?
So, I'll second that, Mr. Chairman.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Motion, excuse me, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passed. Thank you, sir.
Thank you all very much.
Okay, next,
Motion. Mr. Jackie.
Mr. Jackie Calendar. Did you get the second? Okay. Next, staff report on ordinance SR 1202.
This is testing compliance of the specifications ordinance. We're basically just clarifying our checklist that we have and putting it into the LDC and making it into a formal ordinance. And it's clarifying the timing of the quality insurance and the testing reports that got to be turned in.
Is this as a result of dealing with the last guy that was here?
It's just basically just dealing with many different subdivisions that have been going on and stuff, and just people are always coming up with questions and stuff, and we just wanted to get it clarified.
Well, I think we talked about this last time, and one of the developers came and asked to talk to you guys.
Right. Did you guys sit down with Mr.
Yes,
Aguilar?
that was Mr. Aguilar, yes. Yeah, I wasn't here. Ben was talking with Billy about it, and we met with Billy after that since then, and we incorporated all of what he was referring to.
Okay, so he was part of this process, is what I was
Yes, he
asking.
was.
Okay.
So the idea here is that we would like you to review this information and then request a public hearing next month. And I would assume we will get Mr. Aguilar to come back and either support this or tell us he hates it and continue to work on it. Or we can move it to the council for recommendation to add it to our ordinance.
Okay.
And once again, invite any developers who want to have any comment to come and let us know what they feel.
Okay. Any questions?
But you did address all of his concerns?
Yes, we did. We talked to him, and we went back
Or at least
and
you
forth
think you
and
did.
got everything. in-
We'll find out.
Stuff got added,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Then take a,
Just one question. Are we, I take it the engineering department is totally happy with this result?
Yes,
I
yeah,
mean, it
like I
wasn't-
said, it's basically, we had a checklist that was,
This
you
is
know,
what we
very
were looking
similar to
for.
this, and we just wanted to codify it.
This is
and make-
what
and
we were
clarify
looking
it.
for from the beginning, something in writing that we can go to an ordinance with.
Yeah, right.
Thank you.
okay.
Yeah, I think you guys did a good job on this. The intent was to level the playing field between all the developers, and this clarifies a lot of issues that were maybe subject to interpretation, and I think that was the point of this, and I think it was pretty well done. So,
Yep, yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Okay. Entertain a motion to put this for public hearing next month.
I move.
On second.
Okay. Did you catch that? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Do we have an engineering staff report, or was that it?
Hold on.
I have an item under just the staff report heading.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Which is the item for consideration ordinance SR 1211, adding a mortgage verification section to the subdivision regulations. And I have a copy of a letter that we received that if I could get some help handing those out. And I've got a copy of something that the parish legal counsel gave us to hand out as well. What you see on the page that was in your packet was my first blush attempt at addressing the issue that's brought forth in that letter. And what the issue is that when someone submits a plat to my department for a division, be it a family partition or a simple division, we have no checks and balances in place to confirm or deny or verify if there's a mortgage in place on that piece of property. So if Joe Sanamaw divides his property to give it to his children, and then in 10 years the bank needs to foreclose on Joe Sanamaw because he hasn't been paying his mortgage, well, all of the children who got lots are now going to be foreclosed on because they were a part of that original mortgage. They weren't released by the mortgage company. And so what we're doing here is creating a document that is, we're calling it an affidavit of mortgage declaration. And what it is it gives the applicant two options. It says, one, the applicant avers that the above described property is encumbered by a mortgage or lien in favor of the following persons, and they would list the bank. The applicant attaches hereto an official or certified copy of a letter of no objection from the mortgage or lien holder from the property. Or option two is applicant avers that the above described property is not encumbered by any mortgage or lien. They would submit this when they submit their application to us as part of their package. It would be signed and notarized as an official document, and basically it would, I believe, and legal counsel can confirm this, remove the parish's liability in the case that we don't verify. We get an affidavit from the property owner that says there is no mortgage. If there is actually a mortgage, they sign this affidavit and now they're liable for lying, filing a false record, and all the other problems that come along with that. So, our recommendation would be to hold a public hearing after you've reviewed this information and make a recommendation of whether or not we want to add this information to our code and make it a requirement of submittals.
Question?
No question. I'd just like to make a motion that we send this to public hearing because I noticed and I asked the question on several applicants that we had for petitions, we did have verification and others we didn't, and I was wondering why there was a difference.
It's just
Because
not
it wasn't
required.
required. And I think we need to go with this.
And we have a motion, second.
Second the motion.
Mr. Calendar seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
We just wanted to give you a little update on the projects we have going on as far as subdivisions are going. We have 4 subdivisions now that are in their bond period. They've completed their public improvements. They've had everything approved, and now they've gone a year to 2-year bond period. And that's good. That'll bring on 238 lots. Some of these lots are being developed now, and they may have been sold, but the streets themselves have not been accepted yet. And then we have additional 5 subdivisions that are under development now. The public improvements, the streets and the drainage are being done now, and that's another 369 lots. There is another subdivision, or a part of a subdivision, that has been approved. The construction plans have been approved, but they're waiting for some other development to go on before they develop these properties, and that'll bring on another 103 lots. And then there are 2 subdivisions which are in the planning stages right now. I'm reviewing the construction plans on those, and that'll bring on another 227 lots. And that's about it. Oh, and there's about 31 commercial sites that we don't have a lot of involvement in, but we look at the drainage and any mitigation, floodplain mitigation that needs to be done. And there's about 31 of those developments that are taking place.
All good news. Okay, entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting is adjourned, and we will start the zoning meeting as soon as we can get teed up on the video.